to the Workforce Connections podcast, where we discuss workforce development in Southern Nevada. Here's your host.
Hi, and welcome to a very special episode of the WC podcast. Today, I'm very excited. I have two friends of the show, two friends of mine, two great Nevadans on the podcast today. Their many years of public service alone are a reason for us to have much gratitude and admiration for them. But today they're here so we can explore another aspect of their life, their writing. They're both amazing authors. Both have done this podcast already individually. But in today's episode, we will have them here together, and we plan to dig into their writing, focusing on the emotional core of their books, their character development choices, and the specific mechanics of their craft. Dale, Caleb, welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's start right away about the books and their themes. We've asked you both for the purpose of trying to stay a little narrow. We're going to focus and discuss two of those books called, the first one, Three Wives' Tales and A Soldier's Road. And for you, Caleb, Desert Mementos and the Gods of Diyala. So again, we'll have you back to talk about the other ones, but today we'll focus on these. And we'll start with the themes of the book. So Dale, I'll go with you first. Was there an emotional catalyst that first sparked these stories? Was there a specific moment, an image, a real life event that made you want to write these stories?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me back. It's great to see you again and Dr. Cage. For listeners and viewers who don't know, my books are essentially biofiction, is what the academics would call it. They're historical fiction based on my family's story in the 20th century. My family were Basque immigrants. And the books are largely based on oral histories and stories written by my mother and my aunt before their death. And so, yeah, there's an emotional story. I promised my mother I would do something with all this work. Wow. When my mother died, I inherited probably 4 apple crates, because I grew up on a farm, full of all these records. And my mother and aunt had just painstakingly collected them all. And Mom just kept saying, the older she got, like, you have to do something with this. And I would be like, yeah. But it ultimately became a commitment to my mom to preserve those stories in a shorter records for my children. That's how I started, was I wanted my kids to have access to this so they didn't have to go through 4 boxes of records and 4 apple crates when I died. So it really was, as corny as it sounds, it was a promise to my mom.
That sounds so cool, Dale. And I'm going to try not to have so many follow-up questions because we have a lot to get to. But where are those apple crates now?
So they are still in my garage.
Okay.
They're distilled down. I have gotten rid of duplicate records. And my agreement is that the family records will go to the UNR Center for Basque Studies when I die. And that my personal papers will go to special collections.
Very
so
cool.
My children will not have apple crates. They will go to some vault somewhere for some academic to paw through.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Caleb, same question. When it comes to your 2 books we're focusing on today, was there that emotional catalyst, that moment, that life event that sparked you to write these stories?
Yeah, I love this question. And thank you for having me back, and with my friend Dale here. It's good to be here. So the first book is The Gods of Diyala is a memoir, and the second book is a collection of short stories or fiction, and they're both about the Iraq War, which is where I was when I was 24, 25 years old, and just a kid, and the second one, the short stories are a lot centered around Nevada as well. There's Nevada connections with that book as well. The emotional catalyst for me, and I don't know that I was aware of this at the time, but I co-authored it with a gentleman named Greg Tomlin, and we've talked about it since. And when we co-authored the memoir, The Gods of Diyala, together, we were actively processing the experience of being at war for a year. And again, as 27, 28 years old, I'm almost certain I wasn't self-aware enough to know that's what I was doing. Yep. And then I wrote the short stories after that. And as I look back on it, I was continuing to process it from a completely different angle, right? And when you're writing a memoir, you're trying to tell the truth in an interesting way. And in fiction, I think you could say you're trying to tell the truth in a creative way. Mm-hmm. And so obviously had more leeway, and we can get into that later. But both of these books and a lot of my writing has been focused on, okay, you had this experience. This was a pivotal moment in your life. What does it mean, and how do you make sense of it? And a lot of that sense making was in these books.
That's awesome. And I'm going to start with you on the second question. The way like you were talking about history and facts, the way we remember history is not always exactly how it happened. And so how do you choose when to stick specifically with real memoirs versus perhaps infusing some fiction to make the story better?
Yeah. So for the memoir, we had a good story to tell, right? And in my mind, and sticking to the facts was good. But we did, like, there's an opening scene in there where I'll spoil this for the three readers out there who've read it, but it starts with a local national approaching a hill and talking to an American officer and having to be translated, having a translator there to speak. And we're talking about security issues in the town. And what you don't realize is this is a training exercise. The way the book starts, you read it as though it's happening in Iraq, but this is a training exercise in Germany. In fact, very cold Germany when we're going to be in very hot Iraq. And so we tried to take moments like that to be more creative, to tell the truth and get to the essence of what we were trying to say. The fiction, people who know me well and who have read the fiction, will, as Dale would say, or has said previous to this, will say, did this really happen, or was this you, or whatever? Yeah. And it's absolutely written off of real experiences, but all modified for the story, right? In a short story, you maybe have 3,000 words, and I'm trying to make a point in these stories, and so you can't include everything, and it doesn't add to the creative nature of it to do that. So, I think based on the type of writing you're trying to do, that'll dictate how historically accurate it is. But also in creative work of course, it's going to be influenced and informed by real experiences, but fictionalized as well.
That's awesome. Dale, same question. You wrote about these three amazing Basque women, these two soldiers. How did you choose when to use facts or fiction?
You're trying to make a point, even though I'm sort of narrating family histories. So the first book is about my two grandmothers and my mom, and I had all these stories, and I had my mom's first-person memoir. But for that book, I really had to decide the women are, particularly my grandmothers, are sort of archetypes. So I had to push them to the extremes. One is very superstitious, and one is, frankly, from a very moneyed family who married, as my great-grandfather told her, beneath her social class. And so I had to push them a little further. So one is super superstitious, and my grandmother, I made up a lot of stuff about her social standing. She meets the Queen in the opening scene of the book. I don't think my grandmother ever met the Queen of Spain, but I wasn't there, and there was no one to argue with me because they were all dead. In another vacation, my great-grandfather took their piano on vacation because I needed to convey how much money she walked away from when she married my grandfather. The second book is, as you said, about two soldiers. My uncle left a really wonderful oral history about his time in the Pacific during World War II. The other is my children's maternal great-great-grandfather, if you can plot all that in your head, who was a very well-known and very well-documented general. So I really hesitated to make up much about General Farrell. There are scenes in his family setting that are fiction, but even those are based on the record. I had speeches that he gave, I had family archives, and then his papers are at the Carlisle Barracks Military Archives in Pennsylvania. So I adhered to the public record a lot more with the general than I did with my family. But I think Caleb is right. You're trying to make a point, and so a fictional scene, or I use a dialogue to convey emotion. It just helps the reader, I hope, get into that person's head.
Yeah, and you're giving us a glimpse that there's a lot of intentionality on the author's side on how to do it. It's not coincidence or a light decision. You're really using a lot of thought there about when to do it. So that's really cool for one who's not a writer. Let's talk a little bit about the characters, and I'll stay with you, Dale, and then go to Caleb. In these books, these are characters their family, their blood, but who do you relate to more on a personal level from the characters in your book?
This is a hard question.
Yes, good question.
So I knew most of the characters in the book. I did not know General Farrell, and I did not know one of my grandmothers. So I really understood my mother's story. I was very close to my mother. So I understood her story, but I will say, as odd as it sounds, the person I think I relate to most is General Farrell.
Wow.
Listen, I am not a war hero. I never served. But Tom Farrell had this long career in public service, and you can just tell when they needed something done, they called Tommy Farrell. He was never famous. He was always the number two. I'm the same way. I will. When I die, no one will remember that I was here. But whenever I was asked to do something in public life, I showed up. And you can just see that that was General Farrell, whether it was building the Panama Canal or the New York World's Fair, which was the last thing he did almost when he was at his deathbed. I think he had cancer by the time they asked him to work on the New York World's Fair. So I really related to that. This is a guy that just believed in work, and he just believed in service. And so sort of politician after politician or general after general, Tommy Farrell just showed up. And I'd like to think that's how I lived my public career, at least.
Well, I disagree with you. I think a lot of people will remember you the day that I hope is far away still that you're not here, Dale, because both of you, like, again, great Nevadans, you've both served multiple governors. You've both been involved in things like the recovery from a worldwide pandemic, Dale, policy decisions, legislatures that pass huge economic development, education things. Well, so don't worry, my friend. You guys, your work will not be forgotten. Back to the books, Caleb. Again, Dale mentioned it. One of the things I admire most about you is you are our hero. You know, you put your life on the line for this country and all of us and our liberties, and you've been at war. And I could talk to you about that forever, because all these questions about how do you muster up the courage to do some of that stuff. But here in your books, you give us a glimpse into it. And so again, these characters, which one of those characters do you relate most at a personal level?
You know, and this isn't going to be an answer that reflects well on me, because the characters I write about are typically, especially in the fiction, a little more shabby. But first of all, I appreciate that sentiment very much, and I know it's intended and meant, and I thank you. I don't see myself as a hero. I worked with a lot of heroes, right? And I take no offense at that at all, but just it's important for me to say that. And as another aside, at the risk of running long, I think to Dale's point about not being remembered, I think we should have an episode of all of the people that whose lives Dale has changed, and including mine, and have a talk about that. But we probably don't have room for that in here.
Come back and do it.
Yeah. I wasn't pitching that, but he's a great man and a great Nevadan and a great friend, and I'm lucky to call him a mentor. So the very first short story in this collection was the last one I wrote, and this takes a little bit of setup to get to, but the short stories in the collection, Desert Mementos, are written and they follow a 1-year deployment timeline. So the second story starts on the first patrol a platoon leader makes. You know, the middle stories are halfway down the career path of a deployment, and then the last stories are coming home. And I'd written all of those stories, and I thought, okay, this is great. That's a great device to use it that way. It's cute, but what does it mean? And I couldn't say that the book meant anything at that point, just based on that. So I wrote another short story as a framing short story, and it's after a soldier's deployment, and he's young. He's 18, 19 years old. He comes home to Reno, where he's from, and he's clearly struggling with some stuff in life and making just bad decisions and whatever. I wrote that story. I shouldn't admit this, but I wrote that story in one sitting in a chair in my living room in a couple of hours on an afternoon. It is my favorite story. It's the best story in the book. And it just came to me. And of course I went back and edited it some and I've changed it and that sort of thing. But that story is what the whole book is about, right? This is what you get from these other stories, from this year-long deployment. And I think it was so easy to write that because it was I shouldn't say it was me. You'll read the story and understand why. It was where I was at that time, right? I'm 30 years old. I'm trying to figure out life. I'm trying to figure out what all of this meant. Am I broken? Am I, do I just, push my ears back and keep walking through the hailstorm, or whatever the metaphor is? But what does this look like? And that is, I'm very happy to say, not where I am anymore. But when I wrote that was a reflection of where my mind was at that time. So
thank you for sharing that. And for me, it's now so amazing to get a glimpse into the author's, journey. That is awesome. I'll stay with you before I go back to Dale. You've talked about how these characters are a mix of fact and fiction, and you have to construct that. How do you go about constructing the voices of these different characters? Is it difficult to find the right tone for each one of them, or has that come easy?
Yeah, I've never trained as a fiction writer, and one of my big fears is that I don't know what I'm doing, right? And you're just trying. I rely on dialogue. I think I'm relatively strong at writing dialogue. Some of my reviewers have not been as big of fans of some of my dialogue in different phases of publication. But I think, as Dale said, dialogue is how you get to the humanity of that person, because what they're saying is a reflection of what they're thinking, or at least that's the assumption. So I think that's really important. And I wanted to, when I was writing fiction, I wanted to write something that was real, right? And it didn't have necessarily a political point to make about the war, though, all of it's political in a sense, but it didn't have a political point to make about the war, but it had a human point to make about the war. And so seeing how a platoon really interacts, and living with these guys and going on missions with these guys and doing everything we did, there's the guy who's always ready to make the joke. There's the guy who is going to be there early and make sure everything's set up and running. There's going to be the platoon leader who's an idiot and the least experienced person in the whole platoon, but ultimately responsible for everything and should take that seriously and those sorts of things. And so a lot of that was driven by experience, and a lot of that played out with dialogue.
That's awesome. Dale, same question. How do you build the voice of your protagonist? Is it easy for you?
No, it's not. I'm fortunate I had oral history, so I had actual memoir in case of my mother and my uncle, actual transcriptions of recorded history. So I had their actual voice. Wow. I will say it was hard to maintain that in the case of my mother. I'm not a woman. That was difficult. She had her own way of speaking. And my uncle had, at best, an 8th grade education. Several of those years, he was in rural schools and he didn't learn anything. And so I had trouble with dialogue sounding like him without making him sound like Gomer Pyle or something. And so that part was, I could adhere closely to some written record. But in the case of my father's mother, Eladia, my grandmother, I pushed her to be kind of an angry person. And one of the reviewers said, "Your grandmother snaps a lot. You might want to change that, description of her language." And so I probably pushed her further than she deserved, but it was for a purpose. She was not, I think, terribly happy with her choices in this country. And then the last one that was very hard, General Farrell, his daughter was the late Barbara Vukanovich, who was our congresswoman, and I was married to Barbara's granddaughter for a time. And Barbara herself described her dad as phlegmatic. Not a word I would have used to describe my dad, but I didn't have Barbara's vocabulary. And so I have this general who his own daughter says is phlegmatic, and I'm not, as you can tell. I'm sort of a clown. And so every time I would catch myself putting way too much expression in, I had to sort of rein it back and be like, nope, Tom Farrell would never say that or act that way or be noticed in that way. So you do have to, you can create it, but then particularly in a long form, you have to control it for the whole book. And there are places where I lost that voice. I'm not ashamed to say I too am not trained as a writer. I'm trained as a political scientist. Yeah. And so point of view shifts sometimes and isn't always the same voice. But I think for me, and it sounds like for Caleb, that was important. He tried to hold to that
and adhere to it. So interesting, Dale, because again, I'm getting a glimpse that, as you said, when you're constructing a character and its voice, it can't be in isolation. It still has to be a part of this overall story you're trying to tell. And so you take creative liberties and you make decisions that feed into that, making this character who you need him to or her to be. but also continue to try to make the story what it ultimately needs to be.
Yep.
And I love the fact that you're not trained writers. You're a war hero and a political science guy who now is writing amazing stories. So, Diyala, I'm going to stay with you on this one and then go back to Caleb. And we're going to talk a little bit deeper about the writing process. Do you start with a strict outline, or do you discover stories as you start to write them? And has your approach to plotting your storylines evolved since you've been doing this?
Yeah, there's a saying in writing I have read, there are plotters and then there are pantsers. And pantsers are people who write by the seat of their pants. I am a pantser. I am not a plotter. My process is always almost the same. I have to have the first sentence or I can't write that day. If I don't have the first sentence, I will go for another walk with my dog. I have to have that. And in a chapter, or certainly in a long form, I usually know where it ends. Now, in my books, it's easy. Everyone dies. So you're headed there, but that's it. Once I have my first sentence, I sit down and I write by the seat of my pants. The characters speak to me. The story is there, or it is not, and I leave and go for a walk. I am not one of those disciplined writers who can sit for 6 hours a day and edit and go over and over their work. My work is not that good because it doesn't get that many edits, but that is how I have to do it. The story has to talk to me. Once I have that little first kernel, that will happen. And if it doesn't happen, it won't happen that day.
Wow. For good or bad, when you're talking about that, I think about Danny DeVito in the movie, it doesn't come, the thing. And then I thought also about I think another thing where it says, it was the best of time and it was the worst of time. Like, the first line you have.
First line.
Yeah.
Gotta have it.
That's awesome. A writer's mind. Wow. I never thought this roller coaster ride would be this fun. You guys are taking me on a ride. So, same for you. Are you a plotter or a pantser?
I'm a pantser, and this is a newly found word for me. I have tried. There are stories. There is one story in my collection that started as an outline, and I'm trying to remember the title of it right now, but irrelevant. It started as an outline, and it was start to finish. It was done, and I just went in and I filled that out, and that was one of the more unfulfilling writing experiences for me. And I was trying to be more of a plotter, right? This is how you're supposed to write. It's a discipline, all of these things. And the story came out okay. And it's called Proxy War. It came out okay. And I do have some friends who like that one the best and that sort of thing. But that one was very much the result of an outline. I can still see the whiteboard in my office that it was all plotted out on. But like Dale, I'm very much I will commonly pick up a work of fiction off my shelf and read just the first line, because that will tell you what you need to know about how interested you are in that book. So that first line is really important. And then I find that, having input, there's an author in Reno named Brad Summerhill, who's been a friend for a long time, and he read some of my stories, and I have to say his feedback was really direct, and extremely helpful in the sense of saying, don't do this. This is your show it, don't say it. These sorts of phrases that I think that are out there, and so I'll go back, and once I have a story, I'll go back and edit it. And you can do that in short stories better than a novel, but go back and edit it. But I will, to the way you frame the original question is very interesting to me. I will discover things about the story as I'm writing it and think, this is great. I got to add this, or, I need to do a callback to this because it was there earlier. And I don't think I can do that if I'm a plotter as well. I think I can write a good government report as a plotter, but fiction requires a little more of a creative experience.
Yeah, the process seems so rich. Thank you guys for exposing us to what only a writer thinks about, I guess, right? So that's really great. So Caleb, let's continue the conversation about the writing process. Earlier, you shared with us a scene that was very close to you. You related to that scene because it was where you were in life at that time. Was that the hardest scene or chapter ever to write, or was the one that was harder to write? And if there was, how did you push through how hard it was to get through that chapter?
Yeah, that one was easy to write in a lot of ways, and I think it was just it was more of a relief to write in some respects. I have a story in here called Soldier's Cross about a young, surprisingly a young man in the Army who's in Iraq and he's from Nevada. All of the stories kind of fall around that, but he comes back to Nevada and he comes to Las Vegas where he's from. And in the meantime, his family has fallen apart, and his mom is really struggling with. I got to get through this. His mom is really struggling with him being gone, and what's happened with her relationship with his father, and all of these things, which is not me, right? That part of it is not something I experienced, but she has to see him off at the airport at the end of it, and. I won't be able to describe the scene much more than that, but that was, without question, the hardest to write because that was my mom, right? And that was my mom at the airport, and that was that experience I had with her. And it's funny, I love that story, and I chose to read that story in Fallon last year at a reading, and that scene came up, and one of my friends was in the audience, and as I'm blubbering through this section, said, "Why did you choose to read that story?" Right? Out of all of the ones you could have chosen, and that one to me is, I mean, I picture my mom as that mother in the story, having to say goodbye to her son, and I'm going to leave it there because that's all
so
I can
awesome.
say.
Because you guys have been telling this already. You're mixing, real things with fictional things that actually elaborate the story you want to tell, and you're taking real memoirs, maybe giving that experience to another character, but really it's your mom, not his mom. That's amazing. That's awesome. I'm going to switch now, I guess, to another question because we already this is the same question. I'm going to have to go back to Dale. Dale, what was the hardest scene or chapter for you to write, and how did you push through it?
Similar to Caleb, a lot of these stories are about my mom or people I knew, and there's some sadness, and typically in their marriages. That was hard. I was always worried my cousins would read it and get mad. My cousins in Spain are now reading the book, and I've heard from them. I have to say in my best Spanish, thanks to Gemini translation, it's made up. It's not all true. Please don't believe some of these things. But I will say, I'll talk about something factual. So when my uncle came home from the war, he was horribly wounded on Okinawa. He was in hospital for 2 years and had, I think, 26 surgeries during that time. Yeah. So he comes home, and in his family, this oral history that he did for us, he arrives in October of 47. I moved home to live with Mom. In May of 1954, I married Gertrude Jones. Wow. And I'm like, what the hell happened for 7 years? Yeah. This is a man who, blow by blow, I knew how much he paid for whiskey on Guam. I knew, detailed stories about things that happened in the tank, then things that the maggots they put in his cast in the hospital, and this 7-year gap. And I had to go do research. A friend recommended a film made just at the end of the war. I think it's called The Best Years of Their Lives. Right. It is about amputees. My uncle was an amputee. He lost his arm, or lost his leg, nearly lost an arm. And it's about these guys who come home. One becomes an alcoholic. One becomes really angry. I don't know what happened to the other. I had to go and figure out what the heck happened. And I figured it out, I think, from family stories. So it's not a very flattering portrayal. My uncle becomes an alcoholic at the end of the war when he's finally home. And it was really hard because I don't know that he was an alcoholic. I don't know that he was rude to my grandmother. He has a horrible marriage that occurs during this period. I had to fill in 7 years based on what I thought was sort of a placeholder representation for a lot of the guys who came home from that war and many wars, not in the best mental health. Yeah. And sometimes I worry that I got it wrong, but I think it was probably important to say.
No, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I can sense from what you share that it is very real, the having to push through. I've never done it, but I can see if you're emotionally attached to it, it can be very difficult. Dale, writers rarely agree on every piece of writing advice, but is there a rule that you swear by, one common writing rule that you think, is either made not to be broken right now, or one that is made to be broken?
So this is another really good question. I am, again, not a trained writer of fiction. I studied all those rules from your 9th grade English teacher about grammar and what a paragraph is supposed to be, and never start a sentence with and or but. I say break all those rules. None of that applies anymore, particularly when you're writing fiction. So a lot of my sentences begin with and. My paragraphs can be really short. So I don't have a set rule other than I need to know the first sentence for the day, whether it's the beginning of a scene or a book. That is important for me. But all those rules about structure and grammar, I am not that kind of a writer. Caleb is a much better writer. Caleb is one of the few people I have always enjoyed being edited by. We used to write speeches together. And I could say to Caleb, this speech is 5 minutes too long. He would take out 5 minutes worth of words and do no damage.
Wow.
I'm not that kind of writer. And so my rule is like, yeah, screw all the structure. And then someone like Caleb will come along and like be like, yeah, well, dude, you need a little more structure in here. So rely on an editor, but I write for the ear.
Very good. Thank you, Dale. How about you, Caleb? Is it the same or different for you, this process?
Yeah, the question about writing advice. First, I got to say, one of my favorite Dale and Caleb stories was right. I won't get into the details of the speech, but writing an important speech. Dale was writing it, and I was coming back from. I was coming back from Europe with my family, and I had a 14-hour flight. And so I had the luxury of time to go through and do some condensing, but it was a wonderful experience for me, and I'm very proud that I got to play a small part in that. But so my probably a top 5 writer for me, and this will, if you know the name or if your viewers know the name, will tell you a lot more about me than perhaps I'd like to share. But top 5 writer for me is a guy named Dennis Johnson, and he writes these. He's deceased now, and I read his writing advice, and he says, apologies for the image here, but he says, write naked, and there's a literal translation of that I won't get into, but the figurative that means to me is like he's saying, and if you read his work, he's saying you're not hiding anything. You can't hide anything. Your reader is not going to benefit from you hiding anything and hiding behind fiction and these sorts of things. And his books, he doesn't. And sometimes they're horrifically sad, or they're always horrifically sad, which is why I like them. But that's one of those things that I try to think about. Like, what are you really trying to say? What are you really trying to show here? And how do you get to that? The other thing, and this goes against me being a pantser, not a plotter. A friend of mine is a writer, and I was talking to her about some of my challenges and just getting things done. And she recommended a book to me called The War of Art, which is a funny title. It was, I can't recall the writer's name, and shame on me, but he was the author of The Legend of Bagger Vance. And he basically writes this short book, short chapters about how he approaches writing. And he walks into his office, he puts on this fighter jacket, and he's got a name tag from a conference he wears and his glasses, and he gets into a uniform. And it's comical. It's not intended to be, preparing for war or anything like that. But he does that and then sits at his desk or stands at his desk and he writes. And he goes through these things that he does in order to be disciplined about it. And I look at that as a pantser, as like, those are the things I try to do, because that's how you become productive, right? And that's how you get the words on the page, and go back and edit as well.
That's so cool. I've been waiting patiently to ask this question, because this is the one that excited me. If Caleb, the books Desert Mementos and The Gods of Diyala were adapted into a film, who would be the dream cast for the main characters?
Oh, this is a funny one. My joke line would be Bobcat Goldthwait or Zach Galifianakis or something like that, right? These classic American comedians. The dream cast. I'll answer it this way. There's a movie I really, really liked, and this is a theme of mine. It's really, really sad. called Manchester by the Sea. And in my mind, watching that was the clearest depiction of PTSD in a film that I'd ever seen, right? It was real. And Casey Affleck was the lead in that, and he was amazing. And it's a heartbreaking story, but you can tell that he's really dealing with whatever he had been through. And so that's my easy answer. It's kind of a type. I think Casey Affleck would be great in something like this. And, you know, there are a lot of good war movies, and they always find good casts for them.
Yeah, that's cool. But I love that you focused on somebody who already demonstrated that passion that you wrote for, and they interpreted it the right way.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Dale, Three Wives' Tales and A Soldier's Road is coming to Hollywood.
Yeah.
And, you know, so you go ahead and pick your dream cast.
So it's so hard for me because these books cover their whole lives, right? And so I don't know whether you would pick a young person and age them, or you'd pick an old person and CG them with computer graphics. I really struggle with this. So I'll go with the names that came to my mind quickly. I really don't know for my grandmothers. But my mom, I would cast Anne Hathaway because she has a big toothy smile, just like my mom did when she was a young woman.
That's cool.
And I love her. From the time she was in Princess Diaries, I watched with my daughter to today. She's just got that big toothy smile, but she's got a lot of range too. And then I guess, you know, looking for military guys, George Clooney would make a great Tom Farrell. George Clooney's probably along the tooth, like a shameless promotion, Jeremy Renner, who happens to be a Nevadan, who could produce this book as a movie. You cast Jeremy Renner, I think, as a soldier. And for my uncle was really short. He was a tiny guy. And so, and I'm not going to have Tom Cruise. I would love to see Daniel Radcliffe, who played Harry Potter, because I think the kid has incredible range. And he's probably in his late 30s by now. I think he could do both the funny, my uncle's nickname was Cotton because he drank so much as a young person, not when he was drinking to excess. He was a funny guy. And I think Radcliffe could do that. So probably that.
Caleb, I think we have to raise some money to get this cast. That was
for both of them.
Yeah, that was a big cast.
I think Bobcat Goldthwait would be great in Dale's books too, just for the record.
He would.
And I love that you mentioned another Nevadan. So that's great. I think that, you know, the one thing that my perspective was, I mentioned that I loved the fact that these Basque women that are his family, their stories were put into life. And one thing I liked, Caleb, about your stories is that this comparison to this land in Iraq, so far from here, and there kept being comparisons about Nevada is kind of similar in this way, that way. You know, and there's very few things a lot of times that we think, well, what do we have in Nevada? We don't have Disneyland, we don't have that. But even the beauty of the desert that was in those things was something to be proud of. So in closing, I have a question for you guys, because I figured, you know, I wasn't prepared at all to talk to two amazing writers, but I want to thank my son, Sam, who big Dale fan. He helped me prepare for this. And but there's a question here that is kind of unique. I've never asked this question, but Dale, I'll start with you. What question do you secretly wish an interviewer would ask you about your books, but nobody has asked yet?
So are you then going to ask me the question?
Absolutely. I won't. Okay. I promise you I won't.
So I think I've never been asked what didn't make the cut. Because you have to make choices.
Yeah, we learned that today.
And there are either topics that I decided, nope, not going there. Knew these people, and nobody needs to read that. Or I don't write naked always. Or just like, no, this is fun, but doesn't fit. I've never been asked what's on if it was a film, what's on the cutting room floor, what piece of paper did you throw away, or what file did you delete?
Very good.
I think that would.
And I won't ask you that question.
Good.
I think
it would be a good question, though.
Yeah. Okay. So that was what I was going to say. You would welcome that question one day.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want some time to think about it.
Yeah. That's very good.
Yeah. I think because those are, again, it's about choices. What got in and what didn't. I think you would learn a lot about a writer.
Yeah. I've learned a lot about writing today and writers and how you process this very real information that can be emotional and connected in such strong ways to you, to yourself, through either your own experiences, your families. I'll never forget the image of those apple crates sitting in Dale's garage. But back to you, Caleb. Is there a question that you secretly wish they would ask you, and that you don't have to answer today, but that nobody's asked yet?
You've already answered my follow-up, which Dale asked as well, because I'm not sure I'd want to answer this. But you touched on this with the comparison of the two deserts, and that's something that was very important to me when I was writing, is comparing and contrasting and what those things come from. But a question I think about that when considering your question is, how does a work like Desert Mementos fit into the broader Nevada literature, right? Because it's a Nevada book at the end of the day, right? That's what I wrote it as, and I'm so grateful to the University of Nevada Press for publishing it. I mean, I'm so proud of that. But there are so many writers out there right now. Willie Vlotton, whose Motel Life is about Reno, or Lee Barnes, who's writes war stories, and a lot of them set in here in Vegas. Laura McBride has a great novel set in Las Vegas. Claire Vaye Watkins has just, I think she's originally from the Pahrump area, and so writes a lot about rural Nevada, northern Nevada, and Nevada in general. And I think these authors, this sort of current generation of Nevada authors, are saying something unique about Nevada. And I'll say, when I left Nevada, I thought, when I was 18 and I went off to college and I knew everything, I never want to go back to that place. There's no green, there's no, whatever. And as soon as I was committed to 7 years in the 5 years in the Army, 2 more years of school, I couldn't wait to get back to Nevada. And coming back and seeing where I just used to see brushland, now I see this desert beauty that I love of my home state. And I think these writers like these, are really trying to get to what is unique about Nevada and what does Nevada mean. It's a young state, and a lot of the writing that's happened so far has been about mining or gaming or, those sorts of things. And so I guess my question would be, how does this fit into those, the other fiction about Nevada set in or related to Nevada? And what are all these books saying about Nevada?
Wow, very cool. If somebody, one of our listeners or viewers, Caleb, wants to learn more about you, your books, events you might have, because again, I mentioned I went to one of Dale's events here at the historic West Side School, a reading. How does one find out where to find out more about Caleb Cage?
Yeah, I'm terrible about being out there and promoting, and I think opportunities like this are awesome, and I always appreciate the chance to come back, Jaime. But I think I'm on social media and post periodically, and you can. I try to write a lot too, and I'm trying to write more, and try to find a platform. But I don't really have a good platform. But if they Google me, they can find ways to contact me or connect with me or follow me that way.
Very good. How about you, Dale? How does one find more about Three Wise Tales, A Soldier's Road, or any of your work, and what you're up to now in retirement?
So if Caleb is terrible about this, I'm even worse, and you can't find me. That's a tough question. I suppose I'm still on Facebook. Otherwise, I'm pretty invisible in retirement. I was a public figure for a very long time, and I don't do a lot. I rarely have public statements or opinions anymore. So probably hard to find. But always happy to talk to somebody about their family history, genealogy, or writers who are struggling through this. So probably find me on Facebook. If you Google me, you'll just get a list of all the jobs I ever had. You'll never find me. So try Facebook. Try me through Workforce Connections. I think all of our books are available on Amazon if you wanted to go to Amazon. Some are available from independent presses too, if you prefer that. But read the books, and you'll learn a lot about this guy if you read his short stories.
Yes.
Even though he says they're not really about him.
And I secretly love Dale because I was a part of your some of your professional chapters, enjoyed working with you, and again learned a lot. but I am secretly happy every time I see a picture of you and your dog in rural Nevada by a river stream or something. Your happy face. You've earned it. Yeah, that retirement. You were out here, like you said, putting your face, your name, your work on the line. And so, yeah, I'm secretly happy every time I see you by a river stream up in rural Nevada somewhere. So
I am very lucky to get to do this now.
I'm going to, Dil, let you say any departing words before I close the podcast. I want to thank you for being here. It's always good to see you, spend time with you. I know we're going to have lunch right after. So any departing words that you would like to share with our audience, our viewers of your visit today?
Two things. One, thank you again, and thank you for the work that you do and your organization does to talk about Nevada and working Nevada. I've seen ups and downs of when people had jobs and when they didn't. And so it's really wonderful that you provide a space for those conversations. And I would roll that over into the space within families. My work is all written because my family told stories. We did not have money, so we did not have vacations. We did not do super interesting things. They told us stories, and then someone wrote them down. And so I am just a believer, write down what you are living through, whether it's your job or not. Interview your grandmother before she is gone, because when they are gone, they are gone. And I think everybody has a book in them. Everybody has stories. And I think all those stories tell us something about ourselves and about our state. I learned a lot about myself and my state by writing about people who chose to live here and chose to defend that right.
That's cool. Thank you, Dale. Kayla, same thing. Departing thoughts for you.
Wish I didn't have to follow that as a first thought, but no, I'll start by thanking you for the opportunity and to be here. And it's always great to see you again. And I too value the great work you're doing and your entire team here. This podcast is a great way to get out into the community. But Dale and I know from our professional journeys and working with you and Irene and others that the passion that goes into changing lives that you all have here is immense. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for you bringing me together with my friend here. I typically see Dale at airports, I think, is where we see each other. And it's by happenstance. And so this was really, this is something I'll cherish for a long time, is the ability to sit by you. And all of your humility aside, Dale, I'm going to embarrass you and just say the impact you have had on this state is immense. The impact you've had on me is immense, and I'm grateful to you as well. I too, as I am getting older, would like to encourage people to find those times to interview the people you love, to capture these things, to process things through writing, to put these things down. And write it, whether it's for yourself or for another audience, just write it and get that done. You'll never regret that. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I can tell you how, much fun, how much, I've learned. Again, I thank my son, Sam, who has helped me prepare for this, but now I know I'm going to pitch you guys for a follow-up because, this was so much fun. We got to do something else. We got to tell these stories. And I think we got to inspire, as you said, others to maybe become like you, people who document things that we can't lose. We got to keep, those things alive. So thank you to the both of you. Yeah, it's been awesome to spend time with you. And so that's it for another episode of the WC Podcast. We want to thank the people behind the scenes that make this happen. In this case, it includes my son as well. And we want to see you at the next episode. So until then, stay safe. Caleb and Dale, thank you for staying over for our bonus segment called In the Hot Seat. Are you ready?
We're ready.
All right. The first segment is called Rapid Fire Sequence. The key is to, again, rapid fire questions is rapid fire answers. So, Caleb, I'm going to begin with you. Your favorite book as a child?
It was a balloon about, or it was a book about balloons, and I can't remember the name of it, but I read it a lot. I think it was called it might have been called 99 Hot Air Balloons, but I'm not sure. That might
Dale,
be that song.
Same question.
A Wrinkle in Time.
Dale, your favorite book as an adult?
Anything by Gore Vidal.
Caleb?
Favorite book as an adult? I'll say The Motel Life by Willie Flaughton.
Caleb, your favorite author ever?
Dennis Johnson.
Dale?
Gore Vidal.
Dale, do you write in silence or with music?
Silence.
Caleb?
Silence.
Caleb, tell us a specific writing ritual you might have.
I have a Stetson open road cowboy hat that I refer to as my writing hat.
Love it. Dale, you got Dale on that one.
Now I have a cowboy hat. I don't have a ritual, I don't think.
Okay, I was hoping Dale would say, I unclothe, I write naked.
No, don't write naked.
Dale, do you read your book reviews?
No.
Caleb? Yes.
Absolutely.
Caleb, the best compliment your writing has received so far?
My father read my collection of short stories and said, I think you're trying to say something real about the war here.
That's awesome. Dale, best compliment your writing has received?
Anytime someone says, this sounds just like my grandmother, or this sounds just like someone in my family, that means a lot.
Awesome. Dale, let's flip it. The toughest criticism your writing has received so far?
The very first chapters that I wrote of Three Wives' Tales, I showed to somebody I was dating, and he said, yeah, it sounds like a book, and handed it back.
That's so cool. Caleb, the toughest criticism your writing has received so far?
I wrote a book called War Narratives that was not very good, and it was reviewed by an academic publication and accurately said that it didn't fit into the literature at all.
Awesome. Caleb, which character in your books would you get along with in real life?
I think the main character in Soldier's Cross, who comes home and is trying to navigate life, I think is a guy I'd like.
Dale, who would you hang out in real life with your characters? Which one?
Well, I hung out a lot with my mom. My uncle Bob, I would like to have hung out with him as an adult. He died when I was about 13.
Very cool. Dale, what is the absolute weirdest object you have ever used as a makeshift bookmark?
I don't know. This is weird. Train and airline boarding passes, tickets.
Okay. Caleb.
I have young kids at home, and so I would say a children's book.
All right.
As a bookmark.
Caleb, when people ask you, where do you get your ideas? What is the most elaborate lie you have ever told them?
That's great. I guess if I was very quick-witted, I could make up an elaborate lie right now. I don't know that I've ever had any elaborate lies for that question, and my time has passed, so I apologize.
No worries. Dale.
What was the question?
When people ask you, where do you get your ideas for these books? What's the most elaborate lie you have ever told them about where you get your ideas?
Oh, that I have done hours of research, background on the subject matter, and everything about the war and everything about Nevada.
Yeah, hours in the Mormon temple,
Yeah.
genealogy, all that stuff. Very good. Dale, last one. Tell us something about yourself we likely don't know. The more obscure, the better.
I hate talking in public and have generalized anxiety disorder.
Very good. Kayla, same question.
I am a fan and aficionado of the Southern rock and roll group, the Drive-By Truckers.
Wow, very cool. Well, you made it through the first segment. The second one is called True or False. I want you to pick up those paddles and show me, make sure we have one true side, one false side. Very good. We're ready. So I'm going to give you a series of statements, and I want you to go ahead and show me how you feel about that statement.
At the same time?
Yeah, at the same time. Yeah. Please don't cheat and look at each other. All right. First one, working for a governor is hard. Very good. Working for a governor is rewarding. You have had, you, Dale, you, Caleb, loud, robust, healthy verbal exchanges with a governor. Dale, I love you, Dale. Both of you. You would work for a governor again. Wow. So insightful. Both of you. Politics taught you valuable lessons. Both of you. You love policy making. You love fixing problems. I know the answer to this. You hope to run for elected office one day. You love you love this current stage of your life. I think we know the answer. You love writing. You love Nevada. And because you've been here twice, you love doing the WC podcast.
Absolutely.
Dale, Caleb, thank you for joining us one more
you.
time. Thank you for your time today.
Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.